White defeats red by a score of 43-39. Sounds like an offensive renaissance, but the difference is, oh wait, it wasn't, because the white team represented the defense, which means the defense scored 43 points, outscored the red team. And if not for a defensive scoring system that includes points for sacks, turnovers, 3-and-outs, etc., you'd think that there were a lot of pick sixes thrown by Casey Thompson, Heinrich Harburg, Chubba Purdy, etc. And luckily for Nebraska fans and probably everyone's sanity, that wasn't the case. But today we're going to be talking about Nebraska's spring game. I have some takeaways that we'll mention and discuss in a few minutes. But first and foremost, I want to talk about how the game went. And by that, I mean basically the scoring summary, some big plays that occurred, and also briefly talk about the defensive scoring system, and also talk about how the different kinds of halves impacted the game. So first and foremost, the first half was or minor contact. You touch the quarterback, like Garrett Nelson basically two-hand touched, I forget if it was Casey Thompson or Logan Smothers, and I'm pretty sure it was Casey Thompson, but two-hand touch the quarterback and you get a sack. Two-hand touch the running back, you've tackled him in place. Obviously, that makes it a whole lot easier for the defense to get stops, therefore get them points. And in the second half, it wasn't that. It was full contact, which obviously means now you can have broken tackles. You actually have to tackle, which is a lot harder than two-hand touch. So the offense was a lot more active, alive, explosive, consistent in the second half. Though, in saying that, the game's 2 turnovers for the offense occurred in the fourth quarter, which is something that I know Whipple and Frost are going to grill the offense on, because turnovers and collapses by the offense in the fourth quarter killed Nebraska's chances of beating Iowa. That one is known for sure. Same with Ohio State, whether it was missed field goals or the final pick, even though by then the game was probably over. Wisconsin, so many teams Nebraska lost because of missed special teams, which today I actually thought Buschini did a really good job with punts. But anyway, I know that the offense is going to be grilled on that, even though they did score 22 points in the fourth quarter despite those turnovers. The offense was really effective. But anyway, in the first quarter, White dominated. The defense dominated. In fact, they led 12-0, thanks to 2 sacks, 2 3-and-outs, and 3 times where the offense did not reach, 4 times the offense did not reach the 50-yard line. It was a defensively dominated game in the beginning, which did have some cause for concern, but again, two-hand touch makes things a lot easier. The offensive line did look pretty well, despite the 2 sacks in the first quarter. After all, Nebraska's front 7, their linebacker core, and including Garrett Nelson, who I think also is more part of the defensive line, he also is really good. I think Nebraska has one of the best, if not the best, linebacker cores in the Big Ten. So I wasn't really too concerned. And in the first quarter, you got to see some explosiveness with the run game. Anthony Grant had a 60-yard touchdown run and the defensive line on that play was penetrating. If you were to look from Grant's view where he was taking off the ball, I think it was the right side, which I think is where he was supposed to run, completely closed up. So he bounced around onto the left and took off, ran for a touchdown. He looked explosive. He knew what he was doing. There was no hole where there was supposed to be a hole, but he found one on its own, which is very encouraging to have a running back with that kind of awareness. It's something that Nebraska has lacked at the running back position. And honestly, I mean, he was good the entire game. He had 71, he had 69 rushing yards. There's also the loss category. The stats are a little complicated when you first look at them, but after a while they're good. Anyway, He had 69 net rushing yards. Trevin Lubin was the only one ahead of him, and he is obviously a backup. He got a lot of action in the later half, in the second half. But granted, well, that run was really explosive. White still dominated, though. They got a fourth down stop after Grant's 60-yard TD run, and they led 14-7 at the end of the first quarter. Red then had a Chase Contreras field goal, which is stunning, seeing as his struggles this past season. But then again, it's against his own team, and I thought that half of his struggles were due to, nervousness against teams that weren't his own, because nervousness is a huge factor. White then continued to dominate after the Contreras field goal. They scored 5 times in a row to go from 14 points to 29 points. They got a sack, 3 and out. Offense didn't reach the 50-yard line, which was 5 total points. Then got 2 3 and outs in a row, a fourth down stop, and a sack that was also a fourth down stop. All that to lead by 19 at the end of the first half. Red outscored White 7-0 in the third, though. And at this point, a lot of the starters are being subbed out. Backups are coming in. Harburg really got a lot of playing time in that second half. But also, the fact that it was now full contact really helped out the offense, specifically the run game. Also helped out, I thought it helped out the offensive line to a certain degree, but that was probably because a lot of, starters from the defense were being subbed out in exchange for backups. But Harburg had a nice 34-yard pass to Grimes. The pass was a little underthrown, but still it was good of him to see the busted coverage. Grimes obviously made a great play getting behind coverage, and it worked like beauty. And it was 29-17 White. Red really got hot. They got extremely hot in the fourth quarter. They had a 16-yard run by Sinek and a fourth down conversion and a PAT attempt, which was good. Fourth down conversions got you 1 point if you were on the Red offense team. Again, adding more complex things, but it made the game pretty fun. And White only led by 4. They then got a fumble recovery, which is 6 points for the defense. They led 35-25 for Red. They had a 1-yard run by Schuster and a PAT, which resulted in Red trailing only by 3. Then Sinek had a 42-yard pass to Hahn, which had Red leading 39-35. And it looked like the offense was going to seal the deal when an interception by Moore occurred, which led to White regaining the lead by 2. And then the defense also got a fourth down stop to lead 43-39. And that was the end of the game. So the defense came out in clutch. I thought, and still think to a certain degree, that Chenander is going to grill the defense for almost letting down a big lead, leading by 19 points, giving it up, having to come back at the last minute. You should reward them for being clutch, but you cannot give up 19 points, even though, obviously, having full contact really does impact things. We're now going to briefly go over the defensive scoring system and then get into some of my takeaways. The defensive scoring system was a defensive touchdown and a fumble recovery would each be 6 points. Same thing with an interception. So a pick 6 or a fumble recovery for 6 would be 12. A PAT, which would result in a defensive touchdown, I think that means like a blocked PAT, would be a point. A 3 and out is 2 points. A sack is 2 points. A fourth down stop and a 2-point stop are 2 points. And a stop before the 50-yard line is also a point. So now explaining all this, going through and reviewing the game and the scoring summary, let's get into some of my takeaways. So my first takeaway was the O-line has improved in the run and pass block. For example, you look at the scoring summary and all 3 sacks occurred in the first half, which again, two-hand touch, it's going to be easier to sack the quarterback. Second half, I know you don't necessarily have all your starters in, but there were still no sacks, none, in the second half. And there were only 3 total. One by Garrett Nelson, another by Butler, another is listed as a team sack, but still only 3. Martinez last year, he just got bodied every game. So this is encouraging to see that there's only 3 sacks. And I think in the 2021 spring game too, there were a lot more than 3 sacks. I don't remember the stats. I looked at them earlier today, but I definitely saw, I think, more than 5 sacks total that game. I think one quarterback alone had like 4. So the offensive line's improving in the pass block. You look at the total rushing statistics, and part of this is a lack of defensive line depth, which doesn't help, along with backups. Nebraska getting much deeper at the running back room. Nebraska had a total of 375 net rushing yards, 70 rushing attempts, 5.4 average yards per rush, which against Nebraska's defense I think is pretty formidable. They also had 3 rushing touchdowns. They had a total of 416 yards gained, but because of sacks along with tackles for losses, they also lost 41 rushing yards. So they had more rushing yards than they did passing yards. They only had 302 passing yards, 24 completions, 49 attempts, and a pick. They averaged 6.2 yards per attempt, 12.6 yards per completion, and they had 2 passing touchdowns. Total offense was close to 700. Total plays was 119, so the average gain per play was nearly 6. There were 3 fumbles. Only 1 was lost, and I thought that the other 2, for example, when Harburg messed up the snap, fumbled it, I thought he did a nice job of making up for his mistake and quickly recovering it, not trying to pick up the ball and do something fancy, he just fell on it. And a total number of penalties, there were 7 penalties, 65 yards. But to get back to the offensive line, I thought it did well. Nearly 700 offensive yards. It was phenomenal to watch. I thought the improvements were very noticeable. Again, protecting the quarterback, opening up gaps, pushing the defensive line, like the offensive line penetrating the defensive line, opening up multiple gaps, making the running backs' jobs easier, more comfortable. There were times where Harburg, Purdy, whoever had tons of time in the pocket to throw, as if I haven't already mentioned that enough. So the offensive line, notable improvement. Transfer running back Anthony Grant is already dangerous, and you could say that about other guys in Nebraska's running back room, I think. Looking at some guys who could potentially start or be in a rotation, obviously, along with Grant, I think Jacques Yant, although he did not have a great average of nearly 3 yards, I think that there were moments where he did look good. I think that Ramir Johnson had some similar moments. Obviously, their stats not the best, but I still think that they're pretty solid all around. But Anthony Grant, the main story was him, and for good reason. A 60-yard long touchdown run. Net total of 69 rushing yards, 11.4 yards per carry. Crazy. And again, that run showed his awareness, showed that he knows when a hole closes up, you try and find something else. Don't just, have movement. Don't just be a up and down kind of running back. Have some side-to-side motion as well. Just be aware, be smart. And he looked all the part. And he's definitely, I was talking about the other 2, Ramir Johnson, Jacques Yant. Those 2 are probably going to be next after Grant, but I would say Grant is, in retrospect, closer to a mile ahead of them than a foot close to them, honestly. That run in itself shows that. I think that he's dangerous. I had him as an honorable all Big Ten running back, actually, because I do make those kind of lists. Depending on how the other running backs do, maybe I'll bump him up to 3rd team, but he looks really good, and again, the Big Ten is really deep when it comes to running backs. Number 3, there is still mystery surrounding the QB1 spot, in my opinion. You have Logan Smothers, you have Casey Thompson. I think that those two are the guys. though I'd say most quarterbacks on the field did outplay Logan Smothers. Logan Smothers only had 5 completions out of 14 attempts. He got sacked twice, and his passing long was the 3rd shortest. It was only in front of Matt Masker and Casey Thompson, and Casey Thompson only had 4 passing attempts. He was 3 of 4, 31 yards. He himself got sacked once. But 5 of 14, there were times where Smothers overthrew the wide receiver by a mile. It was kind of sad. And the 2 sacks, along with some other things, I don't know. I mean, maybe others have surpassed him, including Heinrich Harburg. I mean, Harburg certainly looked good, especially on that 34-yard long pass. Again, little low, but I shouldn't really even be criticizing it when it resulted in a touchdown, and it was a nice play by both him and his receiver. Jarrett Sinek looked like he could do something as well, though I guarantee you he's not going to see any kind of action. Matt Masker saw some action. Chubba Purdy saw some action as well. There were a total of 6 quarterbacks who passed in today's spring game. But there's still mystery. You know, I think Casey Thompson and Logan Smothers and probably now Heinrich Harburg and Chubba Purdy, I think it's those 4, Masker and Sinek. I don't think you're going to be seeing any of them this year. But I would say that Harburg, from what I could tell, certainly outplayed Logan Smothers. I'd argue that Chubba Purdy, while he had moments and looked good, Harburg might have also outplayed him too. I still am pulling for Casey Thompson. Again, he only got 4 attempts, didn't play much, didn't struggle as bad as, say, Cade McNamara at Michigan, and these two are both presumed starters at the moment for their respective programs. But there's still mystery surrounding it. There's no confirmed QB1. Mark Whipple's going to try and keep it a competition for as long as he can because Nebraska needs the right guy. Because again, Scott Frost, this isn't like he has 4 years left. He has this year to probably get a minimum of 8 wins or he's done. So they need to find the right QB1. And finally, injuries and D-line depth are areas of concern. And I'm just pointing to the D-line depth because the offensive line, it's improving. It looks better, but there are injuries there, along with injuries on the defensive line. And all in all, the offensive line and the run game shouldn't have been as successful as it was unless Donovan Raiola is doing miraculous things in training. And even though to a certain degree he totally could, the progress that I saw this fast definitely points to some regression. And injuries on the defensive line. So that, along with just all-around depth because of injuries, whether it's Turner Corcoran, Thomas Fidone, others as well, those are areas certainly of concern. But I read somewhere that Scott Frost also said that when it comes to summer strength and conditioning and practice, that almost, quote, almost everyone, very vague, but what do you expect from a coach, should be ready. So that's also encouraging. Maybe because of that, and depending on what you hear in the summer, you can disregard this last takeaway. So that's really what I took away from the game, from Nebraska's spring game, where again, white 43, red 39. It was an interesting game. I had fun watching it. There were some other things I had to do, so I couldn't watch the entire thing. But thanks to statistics and thank you for, I guess, me just watching the majority of the game, I got a pretty good idea. I think that my takeaways are correct. And yeah, I think that Nebraska is certainly pointing in the right direction. Special teams, too. One more thing before this video ends. The special teams, definitely. Buschini, every time he punted, it was a good punt. And I don't think you got to see Timmy Bleekrode. I don't even know if he's at Nebraska right now. I suspect he is. Sorry if I don't necessarily know that, but I didn't hear his name at all. I heard Contreras. I heard of Hines. Those are the 2 names I heard of when it came to kicking. But Buschini did a good job punting. Bleekrode, there's a reason he's coming to Nebraska. Not only can he punt, even though Buschini is going to he's also a pretty solid kicker. So, special teams, offensive line, things we talked about this preseason, things we have been talking about, seem to be heading in the right direction, and that is oh so good if you were a Husker fan. That's all I'm going to say for this video. If you liked it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. What did you think of the spring game? Do you agree with my takeaways? Do you disagree with them? Let me know down below and I'll try and reply to you. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.